What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astrodfs DFS, bringing you a brand new video. Today's video going over Week 3's quarterbacks to target on Sunday's main slate. So this is just Sunday games, and not the Sunday night, not Thursday night, not the 2 Monday night. This is just Sunday, and this is my list. So I'm gonna go over each quarterback that I like on the slate. My notes you can see on the right hand side. Face might be blocking some of them, but we'll get to them as we go on. But first is Patrick Mahomes at 8,300, being the most expensive quarterback on the slate, going against the Bears, right? So just some of the notes I have on it of why. For one, the Kansas City Chiefs have PFF's best pass blocking advantage, so automatically that's a huge plus for a quarterback. That's something you want to target. That means less pressures, stuff like that, so they have more time to throw. It basically helps determine what quarterbacks have a better advantage in just getting the ball out, right? So that's not counting the linebackers, that's not counting the corners, the safeties, anything like that. It's basically just counting the offensive lineman versus the defensive lineman / blitz. So that's a good tool that I use. PFF has it. Definitely recommend checking it out. They have a lot of good tools on PFF. I love using their site for information. It's great. So Patrick Mahomes, best PFF pass blocking advantage, so that's huge. Bears also down 2 corners, possibly safety, depending on, we'll see how the week plays out though as of right now. The Bears average 22.2 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and Patrick Mahomes right now, his floor is 20.5. So Edmonds going against Kelsey is going to be a challenging one. But we saw in the playoffs and during the regular season, I believe, too, kind of that matchup. So still like the Chiefs in general, like Mahomes. He's just a quarterback that gets fantasy points. One way or another, he gets his fantasy points. He doesn't do it purposely for fantasy. It's just that's how good of a quarterback he is. So really good matchup there for Kansas City. Not to mention they're 12.5 point favorites. So Vegas is putting Kansas City to at least win by 2 touchdowns. So, that's 2 touchdowns right there. Kansas City is scoring per Vegas, right? That's the total is at like 47. It's one of the highest on the slate. And Vegas just expects Kansas City to score a lot of points. So always something to consider when getting DFS players. Lamar at 7,700 is my next play that I like for cash right now. Another quarterback that has a top 10 PFF pass blocking advantage. Colts right below the Bears, 22.1 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And then Baltimore is a top 10 red zone efficient offense. So if they're able to get down in the red zone, they're going to score, right? Colts secondary is just bad. I've said it. This is a game where we could possibly see Baltimore's passing game a little more, right? So the run game's always going to be there. I think it's always going to be there, whether it's really good or just good, right? I don't think they're going to have too many bad games, but it's not the greatest matchup for their run game. But as far as passing the ball goes, hopefully Odell's in the game. That makes us like it a lot more. But the amount of weapons that Baltimore now has for Lamar, sooner or later we're going to see a huge game, and we kind of saw that last week against Cincinnati. But Baltimore big favorites in this game as well, so another reason to like them. It's a $600 pay down from Mahomes to Lamar. Then 200 cheaper is Justin Herbert against Minnesota. This is the highest total on the slate. And if you played the highest total on the slate last week, you got burnt, right? Every other game went over except the highest total. The highest total was the lowest scoring game, I believe, in week 2. I don't think any game scored less points than Chiefs and Jaguars. So that's something to have. But I think both offenses in general, with the way that the defenses are, right? I think Minnesota's secondary is a bad one, right? And the Chargers offense has so many weapons. Obviously, you're waiting to see Austin Eckler's status. I'd imagine he's gone again. I think they're going to kind of play it safe, but they're 0-2, so you can't play it entirely safe, right? Especially in the division with the Chiefs, who are 1-1. So they're only a game behind. It's not like the Chiefs are 2-0, but towards the end of the season, the Chiefs start to get everything rolling, and they're a very good team towards the end of the year. So, Chargers and Minnesota. Minnesota's played 2 close games, right? Against Tampa Bay, just some mistakes. There against Philly, same thing, 4 fumbles, but they were able to just bounce back. Offensively, just get things rolling. Defensively, they really couldn't. Chargers offense, like I have Herbert, I continue to say it, as an MVP candidate this season, so I'm looking for him to have a big game here. 7,500, so top 5 PFF pass block advantage. Minnesota averaging 21.1 fantasy points a game to quarterbacks. And Justin Herbert's floor is 20.9 fantasy points. Granted, it's a 2-game cycle, or sample, sorry. Don't take that too much into consideration, but that is something good to start the season. So, obviously, that offense of the Chargers, isn't ridiculously scary, but they're very efficient when they have to be. Their defense hasn't clicked, and they're just losing they're losing close games. And they are. It's killer to watch. But 7,500 Justin Herbert is another cash play, and then we start to get to some of the tournament, right? I just look at pay-ups. I think you can pay down. There's some options here. But these are tournament plays, so these are guys that might turn into cash. But I really like them for tournaments right now. And that's Kirk Cousins, $600 cheaper than Herbert. Almost everything is the exact same. A little worse of a pass block advantage for Kirk Cousins. But the contrary to that, the Chargers are allowing 26.6 fantasy points a game to opposing quarterbacks, and that's Ryan Tannehill and Tua. So, same thing, 54 is a total. Kirk Cousins' floor right now is QB1 is 22.5. And the Chargers have allowed the most passing yards so far. Granted, we're going off of what we've seen in 2 weeks. We're not deep in the season. We're not halfway through the season. We're getting the small sample size, evaluating it, breaking it down, seeing, just trending, basically. So, Kirk Cousins, that kind of getting up there in price, right? 6,900. Like, Tua is right there at 7,000. Tua will probably end up as a tournament play for me, but as of right now, I don't have him there yet. But Kirk Cousins, the most expensive tournament quarterback I have. And then down below, we get 3 quarterbacks in a row. Dak against Arizona. This one's interesting to me. Arizona allowing 26 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Dallas is 13-point favorites, though, so they're about 12.5, 13, depending on where you are. So kind of the same thing as the Bears. It's a great matchup for all of Dallas's wide receivers. Brandon Cooks was out, but Jalen Tolbert stepped up, right? The tight ends played good. CeeDee Lamb is always going to be CeeDee Lamb. He's going to get his. And Budda Baker was out, and I'd expect him to probably be out again, looking for a trade possibly. We kind of expected in the offseason. Didn't happen, so 0-2 start might change that. The only thing that worries me of why he's not a cash play is how good Dallas's run game is, right? Dallas, with Tony Pollard, look very efficient, look very clean, very good. Zeke, it was kind of different last year. There would be games to where Zeke would look good, like between the 20s. Obviously, I think he was one of the best goal line backs last season, but it was getting there, right? And the pass game wasn't always a consistent. Dak, some turnovers, but the run game looks really clean. The pass blocking, run blocking is very good. Using 2 tight ends sometimes, 1 tight end, Ferguson playing good. That's the only thing that worries me is Dallas can just get some quick scores. Because, I mean, if you look at Dak's fantasy numbers for how much Dallas has scored, they're not that great. And Dallas's defense is scary. They're so scary. The add-ons they got make Dallas a team that's scary for fantasy. And pretty much Dak. Like, CD and Tony Pollard are going to be really good plays. Getting, Ferguson, Gallup, Cooks involved. That's another thing, but that's what my worry is on Dak. That's why he's a tournament, because Dallas, I expect Dallas to win by a lot, but Dallas could get in a situation where they're just running the ball. Dak gets, maybe 1 touchdown, 100-something yards, and they just run the ball with the running back room they really like. Then right below him is Jared Goff, 6,500 at Atlanta. Another quarterback that has a top 10 PFF pass block advantage. The things that worry me, and yet again why he's not a cash play for me, is Atlanta is bottom 10 in fantasy points per game to quarterback. So, playing Carolina, so you get Bryce Young, and then playing Jordan Love, who they still allow Jordan Love to have I think a solid game, but they have some secondary pieces in there that I think are really good, and they're playing well. So it's something that worries me a little bit. I think one thing though that makes me like Goff and why I have him in tournaments is David Montgomery is expected out a couple weeks, so it'll be Jahmyr Gibbs, Craig Reynolds in that backfield. But Laporta, Amon-Ra, the other Reynolds, Josh Reynolds, have been playing really good. Even Khalif Raymond got included. So that Detroit passing game is really good. So I always want some exposure to Jared Goff, but those are some of my reasons for and against. And then Deshaun Watson, 6,100 against the Titans. Tennessee, 22.1 fantasy points a game per against quarterbacks. Njoku's got one of the worst matchups for tight ends this week. It's very scary. Obviously, losing Nick Chubb is something. Ford played good. Looking for the Kareem Hunt news to see if he does sign. I would imagine he signs, right? I don't think it was really any bad blood. It was Cleveland paying two running backs. It's not really justified. So, and they have some injuries on the offensive line. That's another thing that worries me in this. And yet again, why he's not a cash play. But I do think he has upside going against the Tennessee secondary, who is really bad in my opinion. And then going down, Jordan Love is my first value play, 5,600 against the Saints. Top 5 PFF pass block advantage. Saints giving up 20.3 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And the fact that, Watson and Jones might be back, and those are two good pieces to have back, right? Jordan Love's been playing without his number one wide receiver. Last week, the run game did not look good with A.J. Dillon, so it's clear that Jones is a very crucial part of that offense until they can get somebody else that kind of fits that role or plays better than A.J. Dillon. But another thing is the Saints are a bottom 5. Jordan Love averages 20.3 fantasy points per game. The Saints are a bottom 5 fantasy points per game against quarterbacks. Got to clarify my own writing apparently sometimes, so you guys don't get as confused as apparently I do. But that's some of the positive and negatives about it, right? So Jordan Love has looked good with Green Bay. This is probably their best matchup right now. Saints defense has been very solid, so something to look for. 5,600 is my first value, right? I have 2 rookie quarterbacks as values, and the next one is C.J. Stroud, 5,300 against Jacksonville. Another quarterback, top 10 PFF pass block advantage. Jacksonville allows 23.6 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Huge underdogs in this game, which means they should be passing the ball to catch up. C.J. Stroud almost threw for 400 yards against Indy's defense. Jacksonville got a little better of a defense than Indy, but they have not been playing as good. They stopped Kansas City, which is a worry. Hold them under 20 points, but the way that Houston's run game has been so far this season is something that makes me interested in the pass game, and that's why I have C.J. Stroud as a value right now. And then last is Bryce Young, another quarterback, top 10 PFF pass block advantage. Seattle allowing 22.2 average fantasy points per game. The things that worry me is Bryce Young. His highest fantasy game is 14.5. That was on Monday, and that was that was something. He did a lot better than I thought he would against the Saints. With what they have in the pass game, looked good, right? And it's a better matchup for him this week, so there's 6-point underdogs too. So that's something I kind of target, and I like when setting my exposures to quarterbacks. Is like, granted, these quarterbacks are going to get you points, right? They're going to be in the lead. Someone like Mahomes is always going to get his points. Someone like Dak, right? They score 40, and Dak gets less than 10 fantasy points. But quarterback playing behind. We've seen it with Dobbs. We saw it with Stroud. Like, the quarterbacks get points because they're behind. And teams play back, right? Like, they're not going to allow the one-play touchdown, but they're going to allow you to just drive on them and then have to score, right? So that's the reason I like Stroud. It's the reason I like Bryce Young. The other only news that I'm watching for is Anthony Richardson's concussion protocol. I think Gardner Minshew could become a value play at 5,100 at that point then, just because pricing. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys have any questions and or looking to subscribe to us, the link for that will be in the description down below, where you can get all these plays. I'll have these smash plays kind of updated going into Sunday for you guys, so you guys can get that. Just don't want to release it on these free videos. So if you guys are interested, please click the link in the description, and I will see you guys in the next one.